Okay, in this video, we're going to look at two methods of problem deconstruction using collective intelligence. We're here at the bottom of our list of problem-solving methods in groups, and of course, we might be adding videos to this series later on as we go. So, returning to the work of Professor Epler on knowledge visualization, again, why do we want to build something visually together? Well, the first thing is that it's a quicker way of transferring knowledge than me writing a 10-page report and you reading it. It allows us to transfer knowledge more quickly. It allows us to create new knowledge that, by combining different pieces of information, so we can create new ideas that wouldn't have been possible in any one of us individually. And it can clarify what we know in a way that makes it easier to remember and fight kind of this constant saturation with information that we have in our lives these days. So Professor Andrews puts it this way: most big organizational problems are wicked. They have so many dimensions that they seem impossible to fix. This often leads managers to push for best practice tools that may or may not be well adapted to our context, but at least it gives us something to do quickly by just doing what the best practice is. To mitigate this risk, the problem should be broken down into smaller, more manageable sets of focal points for engagement that are open to localized solution building. This can lead to different and more accurate understandings of the problem. We refer to this process as deconstructing the problem. So taking a vast, big, complex problem and trying to find its elements in a way that allows us to experiment, intervene, try something different. So we deconstruct the problem because if we can get a clearer understanding of the root causes, we can identify the right points of engagement, develop better interventions at each of these points, and begin experimenting to see what works. With a wicked problem, you're not going to find one magic solution. Probably there are going to be lots of different approaches or interventions you're going to have to do in parallel, or maybe do a quick win first and try to generate momentum and political support, right? So these are complex problems that are not going to have one easy or quick solution. So we're going to look at two different methods of deconstructing problems: the 5 method and the Ishikawa, what we call the Ishikawa avancée method of visualizing. And for each of these, we're going to try to see how we can incorporate AI and large language models into our collective work to go smarter and faster. Okay, so let's take this example of trying to attract young talent. Okay, so we say it takes too long to find qualified candidates for our sales teams. We've looked at the problem from different points of view. We've done the problem-solving campus. We've used a persona. Maybe we've mapped the system of who's affected by the problem, the different processes. Okay, so we have all this data. Now we have to figure out, why is this happening? Is this happening because there are good candidates that never hear about us? Good candidates don't like our salary offer. They hear about us, but we don't have a good reputation in the job market. Or maybe there aren't enough good candidates to begin with. Or maybe, and probably this is true, it's some combination of these different causes. We don't know which cause is having a bigger impact than the others. So each of these causes, we need to become aware and recognize that each of these causes is possible, is plausible, and we select the ones that are most plausible, most in line with the facts that we know. And why do we work on multiple causes? Because each of these causes, candidates not hearing about us or not liking the salary, each of these causes has a different solution space that we can explore, a different space of potential approaches to make the problem better. So the 5 method is pretty simple. Its point of departure is the idea that we all have a basic bias towards things that we see and deal with every day, like administrative processes in a company. So when we analyze a problem, we're likely to start with the thing that we can see. Whereas, and this is Matt Andrews' suggestion, we often, if we want to create something more sustainable, we often need to push beyond more immediate or superficial causes to get closer to the roots of the problem. And this is especially important when the problem is wicked, when there are lots of different perspectives, when it touches on things like motivation, identity, culture. And these deeper causes are often less visible things like culture, psychology, motivation, identity. But these are things that are really important to understand if we're going to make progress, build support, move forward together on a wicked problem. And we've seen with this question of recruitment, there are lots of different perspectives on this problem, and probably not one simple all-in-one solution. So here's how the 5 Why method would work. So first you would identify some potential causes, like good candidates don't hear about us, or they don't like the salary, or they don't have a good reputation. And then you choose one and go deep, right? And so for one, let's say we want to figure out, okay, don't like our salary offer. That's something we can see. We want to push beyond that to think maybe we can't see, or that's less obvious. So why don't they like the salary offer? Well, because, and we think about it, we talk about it, well, because it appears less competitive. I heard from a candidate that, the other competitors were offering a better deal. Well, why might that be? Is it just the absolute level of the salary, or is it maybe because we're just focused on the base salary while our competitors are offering more comprehensive salary packages with benefits and flexibility? Why do we focus only on base salary? Maybe it's just we haven't had time or chosen to adapt our own compensation structure to the priorities of young people in the workforce. Well, why haven't we done that? Well, maybe it's because our HR team doesn't feel like they have the authority to change the compensation structure without management support. So just by playing this game of asking why again and again, we collectively can push past the superficial solution or superficial cause to something that's potentially deeper, more profound, and more important. Okay, so that's the 5 Why method. Now let's look at the Ishikawa method of visualizing and prioritizing the causes of the problem that we care about, and again, how we can use LLMs to do this faster and better. Well, this method is born in the complex environment of the Kawasaki shipyards in the 1950s and 60s, where one problem on one end of a naval yard could have big repercussions on hundreds of workers on the other end of a construction site. So this is a typical example of a business environment where you have to be able to understand lots of intersecting factors and manage lots of complex information in a clear way, especially when the situation is urgent. So the Kawasaki team called on a professor of management, Kaoru Ishikawa, who developed this method of deconstructing problems visually. And is considered one of the founding fathers of management science in Japan. And his method is known as a fishbone diagram because of its shape, which you see here, which is similar to the side view of a fish skeleton. Of course, Japan, an island nation, this is a beloved shape for many people. And this method has been adopted by many, many organizations around the world, and I've most commonly seen it in the areas of health and safety or process engineering. And you can see that the basic element of an Ishikawa diagram is a problem, which is at the head. And the causes or potential causes of the problem are given branches here. And in the initial model that he used, each of those branches was a common type of cause or category of cause. And the idea is that by going step by step through this process and isolating the different possible causes, you can have a more complete view of the problem. This helps counteract the tendency of groups sometimes to only focus on a single aspect of the problem instead of the widest possible range of causes. It's fast and intuitive. It's a very visually simple way of pooling information. It makes often complex and multidimensional information relatively easy to remember and update. And an Ishikawa diagram ended up being a very good way of teaching others how to think through the problem and maybe to understand our strategy in dealing with a problem to get resources or support. So here are some advantages of the Ishikawa method. Why do we call it avancée? because the Ishikawa method in its standard form is most often used to facilitate divergent thinking, right? Again, we are biased naturally towards consensus, converging quickly on a familiar solution, recency bias, what worked last time. And so to mitigate some of these potential biases, Ishikawa method encourages you, nudges you to go step by step through a range of potential causes of the problem. So that's its kind of core value added from a collective intelligence standpoint. But at least the standard approach to Ishikawa doesn't solve this problem, which is how do we prioritize? Which of these branches most deserves our attention? Where should we prioritize our efforts and resources right now in the near term? So at SCI, we add a convergent step to the process that uses the intelligence of the team to prioritize potential entry points, subcauses or causes, in a fair and efficient way, using a little voting step that I'll show you in a moment. So in the divergent phase, this is where we want you to think about using AI. I find that a first step to start without being influenced by the AI is a good practice, because we are unconsciously, again, biased towards the first thing that we see, and if the first thing we see is coming from the AI, we're likely to be anchored in that direction. So, starting from a blank sheet of paper, what are the most likely causes based on our local knowledge, of the problem? Doing that in a way that is individual first. People can write down on their notebooks like what they think the top 3 causes are. So we avoid the anchoring bias and psychological safety issues. And then a collective discussion where we're just filling out a list of what are some possible causes of the problem. Then I would recommend turning to the LLM and giving it a persona. You are an expert in marketing. You are an expert in social media. Here's the problem. You describe it. What could be causing it? And this way, the AI could help flesh out or develop your list of potential causes. And then you go back to your team and you say, okay, well, the AI has given us this list of 10. Which are the best 2 or 3 or 4 that we think are that we may have missed? How do we merge them together, reformulate, refine ideas into a final list that then we can take from the paper onto the whiteboard or the diagram? So let's use this example of how we think about the causes of the problem of attracting talent to our team. Okay, so we put the problem statement at the head. The problem is we're not finding enough good young candidates. We've already seen in our 5 why analysis or in our problem definition canvas some potential causes. Good candidates don't hear about us. Good candidates don't like our salary offer. We don't have a good enough reputation in the job market. Or maybe we come up with another idea that comes from the AI. Oh, what about their candidates that drop out during the recruitment process? And then for each of these causes, then you want to go through and think about what is causing these causes. What are the sub-causes? So why are candidates not hearing about us? Again, you can do the same iterative process. Brainstorm some possible answers to that question. Talk about it as a group, prompt AI, get some more ideas, and then you choose the best ones. So it might be our posts are not written in an inspiring way, or they're not frequent enough, or we're not sending them on the right platform. So you designate cause 1, and then you put sub-cause 1.1, 1.2, 1.3. This allows you later on to be able to use a shorthand to go back to the most important ones. You do the same thing for salary offer. Maybe it's because competitors are offering packages, or maybe it's because candidates have unrealistic expectations of their salary. And you do the same thing for the other causes. This is kind of a simplified version. Sometimes you might have 5 or 6 causes. Each one has 2, 3, 4 sub-causes. It totally depends on the context of the problem. Okay, that's the divergent step. Then as you move to the conversion phase, now it's about prioritizing. Okay, we have all this interesting information. What is the most interesting for us now? And then you ask the group, okay, which one of these sub-causes do you think is really important? And then someone says, I think, it's this question of we write these posts that are not really inspiring. And someone else, and then we discuss that. We go kind of deep on that sub-cause. And we give a score. We decide a collective score of what would be the impact of fixing that on the final problem. If it's a low impact, it's 1. If it's a huge impact, it's 5. What would be the potential cost of fixing it? If it's low cost, it's 1. If it's high cost, it's 5. And what's the feasibility? Meaning, is there anything legal, physical, cultural, psychological standing in the way of us acting on that issue? And you can just ask, well, is this a 3 or 4, and see if there's consensus, or you can do a quick vote by hands, depending on the size of the group, etc. And you, depending on how much time you have, you can do this through a couple different subcauses. Again, asking people to propose ones that they think are particularly important. And then maybe you'll choose at the end, once you've seen all the scores, ones that seem to have medium to high impact, medium to high feasibility, and medium to low cost, right? Those would be the quick wins, a good place to start. So again, summarizing here, right? Divergent phase, you start by putting the problem at the head. And then you discuss and list. Before you start filling your diagram, you want to write it down in your notebook, right? Individual brainstorm, then your LLM to fill in gaps, and then the ones that are, that are particularly interesting, that's where you can do the 5 why. You want to push beyond the superficial explanation to something deeper, right? These are kind of your toolkit for choosing the best, most interesting cause statements. You want to make sure your category list is MECE, right? And then you want to write a sentence for each, right? That is, why is this happening? Because, right, with a who, a what, and a when. Then once you've written this down on a sheet of paper and circled the best ones that you like, that's when you can then start filling out the diagram on the whiteboard or on the flip chart. And the ones that you choose, those are the main branches, and you can then use a one-word summary because you've already written down the fuller statement. And then you want to repeat that process again for the subcauses, using the 5 why, using the LLM to fill in the gaps. That's your divergent phase. And then once you've gotten the widest possible list of interesting causes and subcauses, that's when you take a little break. Everyone reads the full diagram. You ask someone to propose what is one of these subcauses you think is really important. And then you discuss, you give a score, impact, cost, feasibility. And you repeat that as many times as you can, depending on how much time. You don't have to do all the subcauses on your list, but you want to focus on the ones that the group thinks are especially high impact first. And what you're not looking for are things that are medium impact, high cost, medium feasibility, or low feasibility. What you're looking for are things that are medium to high impact, medium to low cost, and highest possible feasibility. Nothing standing in the way. That's your quick win, right? That's a good return on investment. If you have a limited amount of time and resources, you want to go to higher impact stuff that's not as costly and that is feasible. So again, to summarize some best practices here, you want to write your list down in a notebook, refine it with the help of the LLM and the 5 why method, and then start putting it on a diagram using a good category set, the concept of MECE, mutually exclusive and collectively exhaustive. Keep in mind that as you're using AI, that you probably know your local context better than the LLM does, right? So that's why you don't go to the AI first. Probably you have more local knowledge than the AI does because it's trained on all the data in the world. But the AI, because it's trained on all the data in the world, might have some ideas that escaped your attention, right? So this is why it's good to include it in this divergent phase. Think about hidden voices. Who's missing in our group today in this workshop? That might be a good opportunity to say, okay, we don't have anyone here who is a online advertising specialist on how to buy ads. Let's program the LLM to be an online advertising specialist, like fill the empty chair in our team, and give us some ideas, right, on what could be causing our communication problem, for example. And what you'll find is it's usually the case that there are some subcauses that qualify as quick wins, right, where you get at least a medium impact at pretty low cost, and that's high feasibility, and also some that are must wins that are high impact and high cost, meaning that they're really important, but it's going to take a while. And so the smartest strategies generally use the quick wins to generate momentum and support and gain additional resources, maybe try to weaken some of the constraints, while also in parallel beginning work on the must wins, doing both in tandem. And the last couple things to remember: everything you do in a single Ishikawa session is not a final answer. It's a best guess. based on what people know today, the knowledge being pooled in the room. And so you should always think that whatever we're putting in our diagram is a hypothesis that we want to confirm by getting more and better data. It's a good before you leave the room to schedule a time where you're going to come back in 2 weeks or 2 months or half a year and update the Ishikawa with fresh information, with new data that you've gathered. And then again, because wicked problems are constantly changing, they're multidimensional, they're volatile, they're ambiguous, and there almost never is going to be a once and for all solution. So your approach as a facilitator of collective intelligence is to build, maintain, facilitate good learning rituals, whether that's a monthly a seminar, retreat, a weekly lunch, an update, a morning project stand-up. These are the rituals that allow you to pool the knowledge of the group and adjust your strategy as you go. So I hope that was interesting and helpful, and look forward to seeing your Ishikawa diagrams and meeting soon.